back, my story with mental health starts in my childhood. As a kid growing up, I always struggled with my mental health, and I never kind of knew what was wrong or why that was the case. Unfortunately, I went through like a bit of childhood trauma, and like growing up as a person of color in a white community, when you don't know anything about your culture, does set you apart, and it kind of sets you up for failure. For me personally, like one of the most distinct memories I have is the realization that I was different from people, and that has shaped a huge part of my identity, which has caused a lot of angst. And when you have something so catastrophic, as my psychologist likes to say, you are going to form coping mechanisms, and that's exactly what I did. And whilst they worked growing up in order to protect me, in my 30s now, I have learned that that's not the case. And so I'm trying to unpack those things and form an identity that's like aligned exactly to who I am, who I want to be, and how I view myself. The moment I realized I needed to do something about my mental health was in my 20s when I moved to Australia. I had struggled with my mental health, with anxiety and depression, like all of my life. But maybe like 8 years ago, I went through a breakup that was so heartbreaking. I thought that this man was going to be my entire life. I thought that we were going to get married, and to lose something that was so fundamental to what I thought my life was going to look like was completely devastating. But in that, I learned so many lessons, and that was the main reason why I decided to see a psychologist, who I ended up seeing for about 4 years. And that was like completely transformative in my life, because I do have a health background. I've got a bachelor's of medical and health science, a master's of public health, and a grad certificate of nutrition. So I largely, at that point in my life, was doing everything that they tell you to do in order to have good mental health, and yet I still was struggling. And so once I finally got professional help, it was like completely transformative to my life and to myself now, and who I am today as somebody who I believe I've taken on board so much that I've learned through those sessions and through therapy, that I, and like my psychologist has called me before, quite a healthy adult. And that is something that I'm so proud of today, because growing up, I absolutely was not a regulated person. I struggled a lot with my anger and like my frustration to the world being unfair. There is a little girl and a little version of all of us in everyone. There's a little girl in me that I have recently been trying really hard to protect in everything that I do, because there was the little girl that experienced those things, didn't have adults and parents in the room to look after her properly where she felt safe. And so even though I'm an adult today, there is a little girl inside of me that I have to protect, and I have to look out for, and I have to think of. So I have a few photos of myself as a child that, in really hard situations, or in situations that are really uncomfortable, or in the situations that I am actively working through with my psychologist, I'm looking at the photo of that little girl and I'm thinking, who is protecting her? Because it needs to be me. It needs to be me today. Things start to feel off for me when I start to feel sick in the stomach. I think that's where a lot of my discomfort can sit. And it's such a yucky feeling, but it is so powerful to be aware of that, because as soon as I can feel that, I can acknowledge, something's going on, and then that's how I can address it. Learning that about myself has been fundamental in how, I recognize like whether it be that I need to focus on my nutrition for the day, thirst, exercise, having an uncomfortable conversation with a friend, addressing something. Do I need to go exercise? Like how I deal with that. Because the sooner you can be aware of the feelings of discomfort, the sooner you can do something about it. And I think that for me, before I was able to recognize that, it's like constantly just pushing it away, ignoring it. And that doesn't solve anything. It becomes like a bucket that you're pouring water into and you never stop pouring into it, so it starts overflowing, and it's going to continue to overflow until you turn the tap off. There have been so many times in my life where I felt alone, and I think there are different kinds of loneliness. There are feelings of loneliness when you know there's no one in a room, there's no one around. I live alone. I live with a little sausage dog who's right here. This is Lucy. She is my best friend, and I love her so much. But I've lived alone and with Lucy for about 7-8 years now, and that can be really lonely. And I want to remind you to lean on the people in your life and remind yourself that you're not alone. I like to remind myself that any feeling that you're feeling today is not unique. No, there are other people who have felt it before. There are other people that will help you, and there are more people that will feel it.